The Kamakhya Temple in Guwahati, where one of South Asia's largest religious festivals happened a few months ago, is a surprising center of the subcontinent's history. After all, religion's tradition and comfortable relationship with women's menstruation, but at the Kamakhya Temple, millions of people pray to a menstruating goddess. That's because around this shrine, over centuries, kingdoms rose and fell and diverse ethnicities and religions were assimilated. The history of the Kamakhya Temple particularly encapsulates the history of Northeast India as a whole and challenges the way we imagine the spread of Hinduism. I'm Anirudh Kanisetti, historian author of Lords of the Deccan. Welcome to Thinking Medieval, where every week we tell you something new about our complex, innovative past. Always feel free to check out our research and citations below, and remember that we're all figuring out how to think about our messy, bloody, dazzling history. Now, claiming association with divinity has always had beneficial political implications, just ask Indian politicians today. But one of the earliest known inscriptions from Assam actually does the opposite. It claims that a royal donor was descended from a demon. Dating to the 7th century, this inscription begins by eulogizing a demon, Naraka, conceived when the boar god Varaha, a form of Vishnu, retrieved the earth goddess from the bottom of the ocean. The inscription praises him as powerful enough to torment the ambrosia-drinking gods and all-powerful on earth, being the king of kings. Now, according to this inscription, it's from Naraka that the donor Bhaskaravarman, king of Kāmarūpa, in the ancient kingdom of Assam, was descended. But why make that claim? The answer lies in Assam's historic ethno-linguistic diversity, a feature that it shares with other states in India's northeast, including Manipur and Tripura, more in these videos here. In The Cross-Cultural Kingship in Early Medieval Kāmarūpa, Blood, Desire and Magic, historian Paolo Eugenio Rosati argues that speakers of Indo-Aryan languages moved into the Brahmaputra river valley of Assam between the 2nd century BCE and 1st century CE, bringing with them the worship of emerging gods such as Vishnu and Shiva. But the valley was already populated with many peoples, referred to rather dismissively in Gangetic texts as mlecha or barbarian. These communities worshipped female nature deities with aniconic symbols and ritually offered meat and liquor. In contrast, the new immigrants worshipped primarily male deities with iconic symbols, and their Brahmanical worldview regarded meat and liquor as impure. Intermarriage and cultural negotiations occurred as the earliest states began to form by the 4th century CE. It's around this time that the Bhaumas, literally meaning of the earth, the dynasty of King Bhaskaravarman, took root in the region. To the Bhaumas, a local clan outside the pale of the Sanskritic universe, a claim of demon descent allowed considerable flexibility. On the one hand, Naraka, as the son of the god Vishnu, was linked to new subcontinental ideas which saw Vishnu as the premier royal god. On the other, Naraka was believed to have been conceived when the earth goddess was menstruating, a taboo act that influenced his nature and made him demonic. As Naraka's apparent descendants, the Bhaumas now had legitimate reasons to participate in and negotiate with the traditions of their hill people subjects, even if the Brahmanical priesthood saw these practices as impure. Counterintuitively then, while other medieval royal lines gained legitimacy from divine descent, in Kāmarūpa this came from demonic descent. This is just one of the many creative ways in which the peoples of this region engaged with the Sanskritic mainstream of medieval India. Now, the rise of the goddess Kamakhya follows a similar dynamic, a creative engagement with the Sanskritic mainstream, remaining firmly rooted in local tradition. In fact, Kamakhya's popularity was such that her worshippers actually began to nudge back and shape the Sanskritic mainstream. On a hill near modern-day Guwahati, before her emergence in the 8th to 9th century CE, Kamakhya had been worshipped for hundreds of years with rituals that included animal sacrifices, possession and frenzied dance. As religious studies professor Hugh B writes in The Womb of Tantra, Kamakhya was originally one among many goddesses worshipped by local hill peoples. The Khasis, for example, worshipped a goddess called Kamekha, the old cousin or mother. The Jaintiyas offered blood sacrifices to a mother goddess, and the Chutiya kings, who were probably of Bodo origin, worshipped the goddess Kechai Kaki, who was believed to eat human flesh. In Yoni, Yoginīs and mahāvidyās, historian Jae-Eun Shin traces how the Kamakhya goddess rose to become perhaps the region's single most popular. Around the same time, the Bhaumas were a consolidating power in the 7th century. A new religious force emerged in South Asia, the worship of yoginīs, who were fierce, flesh-eating goddesses. They were propitiated using tantric ideas. We talked about how those were used by Shaivites and Buddhists in these videos. Another significant development was the composition of a text called the Devi Mahatmya, which argued that all goddesses were manifestations of the primordial Adi Shakti. By the 9th century, yogini worship had entered the mainstream in Kāmarūpa, where non-Brahmanical rites already had a significant presence. In fact, as Urban argues, rather than a uniform process of locals being Sanskritized or Hinduized, the emergence of Tantra actually involved a complex assimilation from both directions, a dynamic we've seen elsewhere in thinking medieval. The Mlecha dynasty of Kāmarūpa, which overthrew the Bhaumas, constructed a massive stone temple at the Kamakhya spring in the 9th to 10th centuries, which continued to receive grants from their successors, the Palas, in the 11th to 12th centuries. Now, a number of small shrines were also built for yoginis, both on this hill and other sites in Kāmarūpa. But most importantly, a brilliant text called the Kalika Purana was composed during this time, making a potent new argument about the primacy of the goddess Kamakhya, reinventing her as an eternal deity of the region. Appropriating the earlier myth of royal descent from Naraka, the Kalika Purana claimed that Naraka had conquered Kāmarūpa with the assistance of his father Vishnu, after which he was commanded to worship Kamakhya. This helped legitimize the royal worship of the goddess. Next, taking a cue from the Devi Mahatmya, the Purana claimed that this ancient hill goddess was actually a manifestation of a pan-South Asian goddess. It invented an origin story of the natural spring, claiming that it was actually the Yoni or vulva of Sati, the wife of Shiva, which had fallen from her corpse when Shiva carried it around in grief after her self-immolation. The yogini deities, once popular in their own right, were presented in the Purana as subordinate protectors of Kamakhya, further elevating her status. Next, the Purana provided rituals for Kamakhya's worship, the sacrifice of wild animals and even humans. These are contrary to medieval Puranic practice, but very much in line with religious practices among the surrounding hill peoples. Finally, the Purana provided for the ritual consumption of reddish water from the spring, described as the goddess's menstrual blood, and praised for granting magical powers to Kāmarūpa's kings. The cumulative effect of all this, Kamakhya exploded in popularity from a local goddess to a royal one, and then from a royal goddess to a mainstream Hindu deity, all while very much maintaining her ancient tribal roots and rituals. Earlier this year, the red waters of the adjacent Brahmaputra were worshipped by millions of devotees from the Hindu mainstream as the sacred menstrual blood of the goddess Kamakhya. There is no equivalent of such a phenomenon anywhere else in India. That is the ultimate sign of the success of the Kalika Purana, a sign of how powerful religious literature in South Asia can be. As with Manipur and Tripura, some politicians have been eager to interpret these developments as Hinduization, seeing this as proof of the Northeast having been Hindu or Indian from an early period. But the goddess Kamakhya seems to also tell the opposite story, a local tradition adopting elements of Sanskritic Tantric ideas to elevate itself, presenting itself as magically efficacious, capturing royal patronage. There's much more to say about Kamakhya's later history, particularly when Assam was invaded by Delhi and the Ahoms, and on the goddess's complex relationship with the Koch Behar royals. But we'll return to her in future editions of Thinking Medieval. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Follow us everywhere on social media. You can find me on Instagram at Anirudh and at Connected Histories, and on Twitter at Kanisetti. We'll see you next week.